All right. So we're going to do this problem right here. It says quadratics by taking square roots. So basically, what we're doing right here, see where it says f of x, we're going to be setting that equal to 0. So I'm just going to put 0. It says find the zeros of the function. So I want you guys to make f of x, which is your y value, equal to 0. We're going to make 0 equals 8, x squared minus 800. So now all we're going to do is we're going to be solving for x. So here's our equal sign. First step, what are we going to do to both sides to get 8x squared by itself? Anybody can call out.
Negative 8x squared.
Well, you could do that. You could minus 8x squared from both sides. I'm just going to add 800 to both sides to make it so everything's positive. We're going to add this to make it equal to 0, but you could have subtracted 8x squared from both sides too. We're going to add 800 to this side with 800 equals 8x squared. Next step, what do we do to both sides, everybody? Solve for x.
Divide.
Yeah, divide both sides by 8. All right, so these cancel out. 800 divided by 8 is 100. Now, this is the part where at some point you may have been introduced to the square root, all right? But whenever you're solving for something that's being squared, what does that mean? That means 100 equals a number times itself. X squared means x times x. And so if you guys look at your calculator, I may not have a calculator, but if you look at our graphing calculators, you'll look right here, you'll notice x squared. Right above it, you have what's called the square root button that's connected to the x squared. This is kind of the operation that we're going to be doing. We're taking the square root of both sides. So if I take the square root of this side and I take the square root of this side, what is the square root of 100? Square root of 100 is 10. Now here's the thing. Whenever you guys are solving, if I said simplify the square root of 100, if I said simplify the square root of 100, the answer would just be 10. But if I said x squared equals 100 and I wanted you to solve for x, technically it's going to be plus or minus 10. Now why is the answer going to be plus or minus 10? Because what number could I plug in there to make this equal to 100? I could plug in a 10 and a 10. But I could also plug in a negative 10 and a negative 10, because a negative times a negative still equals a positive. So when it says up here, what is your smaller x value? You would say the smaller x value is negative 10. But what's the larger one? Positive 10. Now, this is how you would do it by hand. Obviously, you guys have accessibility to Desmos, and you could type in 8x squared minus 800. And if you zoom out, you could see that one of the zeros is at negative 10 and one of the zeros is at positive 10. All right, so if you type it in, you can find the zeros just by looking at Desmos. I want you guys, I know you guys are laughing like, oh great, I don't have to do any work. But what I'd like you to do is at least try to do things by hand and then use Desmos as a way to check to see if you got the right answers instead of just making Desmos do everything for you, okay? So what I'm gonna do right here, I'm gonna type in a negative 10, type in a positive 10. There we go, all right? So let's go and write this one down. I'm gonna write it down with you. All right, this one's a little bit more complicated, not by much, but a little bit more complicated. And we'll just do one more, and hopefully that should suffice for this section. It's not going to be too bad. All right. So we're just going to write this equation down. We're going to solve it, and then we're going to see if anybody has any questions. Does anybody have any questions so far before I?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm good for right now.
All right.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Good. Okay. All right. So first step, we're going to solve for x. We're solving for x. That's basically we're going to get two different answers. We'll get a smaller one, a larger one. But I got to get all of these x squareds by itself. So I got to take away 4 from this side, and I have to take away a 4 from this side. So these are additive inverses. They zero out. We're left with 3x squared equals 436 minus 4 gets me 432. All right, and then we're going to take 432, and what are we going to divide both sides by? What do you guys think? What are we going to divide both sides by now?
3.
3, yeah. Divide by 3. Divide by 3. And we get x squared equals 432 divided by 3 ends up becoming 144. What's the last thing we got to do now? What do we learn we have to do to solve for something that's being squared? We have to square the root of both sides. So our answer is going to be x equals, and what's the square root of 144? Square root is 12. But what do we have to do with the 12? It could be a positive 12, but it can also be a negative
4.
So our answer right here, the smaller x would be negative 12, and the larger x would be positive 12. Now this one, you can't just type into Desmos exactly the way it is. What you'd actually have to do is you'd have to set everything equal to 0. So in order for this to go into Desmos, I'm going to show you, you can't put 3x squared plus 4. You'd actually have to take away 436 and take away 436 and get negative 432 equals 0. Now you could type this into Desmos, but I want to show you guys what I'm talking about on this one. So we have 3x squared. I can't just put plus 4 equals 436. It's not going to show me anything. Now it'll show me this, and you could put y equals 436, but then you're going to have to zoom out quite a bit because 436 is way, way, way up here. And you can kind of see where the zeros are, where actually not where the zeros are, where it intersects at negative 12 and positive 12. So if you're using Desmos, you'd have to put this in one line and put y equals in the other line. What was the other way that I said that you could do? You could say 3x squared, and then you'd have to take 436 away from both sides. That become minus 432. And then if you go down here, you can find the zeros at negative 12 and positive 12. All right. So one way, what are you going to have to do? One way, you're going to have to set it equal to 0. And the other way, what would you have to do? You'd have to put this in one line and this in the other line, but you'd have to put y equals and y equals. And then you can see where they intersect to check your answer. Now, what I'm going to do is, it's a lot easier, I think it's a lot easier to just do it by hand and just solve it than using. You guys want to do one more, or is that good? You guys want to do one?
Mr. Dominion?
Yeah.
It's not letting AJ in.
Oh, hold on. Let me look. More. Okay, I sent an invite, see if she. All right, here we go. All right, I just admitted her. Hopefully she'll put the recording on. AJ, let us know when you hear us, okay? All right, let's do one more since AJ just joined us, okay? What am I going to set give x equal to, everybody? What do you say? 0. Negative 10 x squared plus 490. Now, why? Remember when you said at the very beginning you were going to take away x squared from both sides, this is where I actually would add this 10x squared to both sides. And the reason why I would add 10x squared to both sides is I like to keep things positive as much as I can. So that zeroes out, and we're left with 10x squared equals 4. All right, see if AJ can hopefully hear us. Not yet. All right, well, hopefully she can see us. AJ, can you hear us?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here.
That's okay. All right. So AJ, you're just starting right now. What we're doing the very first section, quadratics by taking square roots. Okay. When you're doing this and it says find the zeros of the function, what you're going to do is you're going to set whatever this is, and whether it's f of x, g of x, h of x, you're going to set it equal to 0. So hopefully you see that's what we did right here. Oh, that's a triangle. Need a rectangle. We're setting everything equal to 0. Okay, so if you want to catch up, it's going to be a pretty simple process.
Okay.
All right. So we set that equal to 0. The first thing we did, we added 10x squared to both sides. All right. All right. Somebody help me out. I've forgotten what to do. What do I have to do to both sides now? Somebody help me. Yeah, divide both sides by what?
10.
10. Good. Good thing you guys were there to help me out. All right. So we have 10 divided by 10, which gets us x squared equals 49. And what's the last thing that we have to do?
Square root.
Boom.
Right.
Square root. Square root. So that's with x equals. Now, what do we have to do with the square root of 49? We can't just put a 7. So this is the trick, AJ. Right now, technically, 7 times 7 is 49, but what else is also equal to 49 multiplied by itself? Negative 7 times negative 7. So we have to do what's called a plus or a minus 7. And what does that mean in a solution set? In a solution set, we put negative 7, comma, positive 7. This is what you would see in a solution set. Here we're going to write negative 7. Here we're going to write positive 7. One more thing, AJ. We're going to go to Desmos. And if you want to check your answer, you can go to Desmos and you could just put y equals and write down the equation. And our equation was negative 10x squared plus 490. So what we can do is write that in exactly as it appears. Negative 10x squared plus 490. And even you can kind of see where it hits the x-axis, where the zeros are. It's at negative 7 and positive 7.
Yeah.
That's a way you can check your answer. If you do it by hand, you can check your answer for your zeros. Negative 7, positive 7. All right. All right. Looks like we have one more. Another person join us. Kayla's joining us. All right. So Kayla, when you eventually hear us, let us know, and we will move. Go. Our smaller was negative 7, and our larger was positive 7. All right. Now I have the. If this doesn't make sense, you guys can go back. Remember, I'm recording it. I'm going to put this on YouTube after we get all done and I convert it and all that good stuff. All right, so here we go. Next one, we're going to go right up here. This one, it says quadratics by taking square root strategy. Now, what we're going to do right here is we're not going to write, I don't want you to write all this down. I just want you guys to write this down. I'll highlight it. I want you guys just to write this down right here. This is the next section, quadratics by taking square root strategy. So I'm going to write it down too, so you guys have time to write it down. And what we're going to do is we're going to solve this step by step and see where I don't know how to pronounce his name. We'll just call her Montia maybe. But you guys would write that down. And we're going to go ahead and start solving this step by step. All right. Everybody have that written down? I'll take it by your silence. You guys are okay. First
I
step,
have it written down.
take away 8 from both sides. If we take away 8 from both sides, we're left with x plus 8 squared equals 75. So if you take away 8, you subtract 8 from both sides, step 1 is correct. Right, so it looks like what they did right here is they took away an 8 and they took away an 8 and they got this right here. So that's so far so good, okay? Next step, what we have to do to get rid of this pesky 3 right here, what we have to do is we have to divide both sides by 3. Now, when you divide these sides by 3, these will cancel out, and you're left with x plus 8 squared equals, now 75 divided by 3, 25. Now that's what they were supposed to have gotten. What did they end up doing? It looks like she ended not dividing both sides by 3. It looked like she multiplied both sides by 3. So she was supposed to have divided both sides by the number 3, and that should have been 225. That should have been 25. So right here, it looks like she messed up in step number 2. Now, what we're going to do, the answer for this one is step number 2, but what we're going to do is we're going to continue to finish this. All right, we're just going to go ahead and finish this equation so you guys know how to completely, step by step, know how to solve from beginning to end. So right now, here's what I have left. I have x plus 8 being squared equals 25. What am I going to have to do to both sides when you have, how do you unsquare something that's being squared? That's where we have to take the square root on both sides. What comes out of the square root? X plus 8. What comes out? Anybody know what I'm going to put right over here? What the square root of 25 is going to be?
5.
5, you're right. It's going to be 5, but what else do I have to put? I have to put a plus or I have to put a minus. That's the most important thing. So I'm going to highlight that. That's going to be pretty important right here. That whenever you guys are solving using a square root, you have to do a plus or a minus. Now, I want you guys to understand, a number plus 8 could equal a positive or a negative 5. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate this into 2 different equations. So I'm going to give you a chance to write this out. We're going to separate it into x plus 8, which means a number plus 8 could equal a positive 5, but x plus 8 could also equal a negative 5. So you're going to separate it into 2 different equations. Let's give you a chance. There's our equal sign. There's our equal sign. And we do one last step. This is it. One final step. All we have to do is take away an 8, take away an 8. If it's the same step over here, take away an 8, take away an 8. All right? So here we have x equals 5 minus 8, which is negative 3. Over here we get x equals, because these zero out, negative 5 minus 8 more, that's negative 13. So what's my solution set? What's my smaller and larger zeros? That's a horrible bracket. Try it again. There we go. My smaller 0 is negative 13. My larger 0 is negative 3. I realize that's a lot of steps, so I'm going to do more than one of these. We'll kind of go over it. We'll go over it again. All right, I want you guys to see right here. I want you guys to see how you could put this in to check your answer using Desmos. Okay, so if everybody would see this 3 print, I'm going to type this in, and I'm going to type this in. I want you guys to see how this works, okay? So right here, I'm going to go y equals, type in a 3. Open up the parentheses. I'll put x plus 8 plus 6 squared, and also plus 8. And then I'm going to put y equals 83. Y equals 83. Now you can't see anything happening because you have to zoom out to see where this intersects. And it intersects at a -13 and it intersects at a -3. And what I want you guys to see is when you guys set it up like this, you put one here, put another one here, and you see the points of intersection and open to your two answers. There's the -13, there's the -3 that we found. Okay. Now, it didn't ask us for the smaller or larger 0 in this particular one. All it asked us for was what step did they mess up on, and they messed up on step number 2. So I'm just going to go down here and say step 2 is where she messed up on. Now, I won't do one from beginning to end all the way through here. We'll just go ahead and work through what the quote answer would be. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys time to ask questions on this one. Did anybody have a question on the work that we did, why we separated it into 2 equations? How about this? Anybody have any questions about why we subtracted 8 from both sides? All right, how about dividing both sides by 3? Okay, take the square root. I'll take it from your silence, there's no questions. All right, well, let's move on to the next one. All right, here's the next one. I'm going to write it down with you. I'm going to put 1/5 x plus 3 squared minus 2 equals 18. All right, so that's all I'm doing is I'm just taking this right here and I'm rewriting it right here. That's all I'm doing. Does anybody want to take a tell me what they think the very first step that she actually did correctly? She got this. She got to a 20. What would she have to do to both sides to get this side equal to a 20? What would she have to do?
Add 2.
Yeah. We're going to add 2 here. We're going to add 2 here. So she did that correctly. So we have 1/5 x plus 3 squared equals 20. Okay. Now, this is the part that's going to be maybe confusing to some people, maybe not. We have a pesky 1 divided by 5. Does anybody know, besides dividing both sides by 1/5, what could you do to both sides to get rid of a 1 divided by 5? Do you guys know what you guys could multiply both sides by? What's the reciprocal of 1 over 5? What's the flip or the reciprocal of 1 over 5?
5 over 1.
5 over 1. So we're going to multiply both sides by 5 over 1, also known as 5. So we're going to multiply both sides by 5. Now here's what happens. This 5 multiplied by 1/5, those cancel to a 1, and all you're left with is x plus 3 squared equals 100. And you know what? That's what we're going to put right here. Step 2. What could she have written as a result from step 2? What she could have written as a result, if she multiplied this side by a 5, multiplied this side by a 5, she could have written this result right there. So I'm going to look for an answer exactly like this. This is going to be the result. So this is actually going to be, we're not going to work this all the way out. It looks like we worked it out already. Took the square root of both sides, got plus or minus 2, subtracted both sides, and got these 2 answers. What we're going to do is we're going to look for an answer that looks exactly like that. X plus 3 squared equals 100. Right there. There it is. Do you guys want me to do one more of these, or are you guys good on this?
I think I'm
Oh,
good.
we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, one more?
Yes, sir.
I'm good.
You're
I'm
good?
good.
All lowercase, and it should go just fine.
All right. Right now, what we're going to do, you don't necessarily have to write this one down. Maybe just kind of follow. I'm just going to do the work right here, and if you want to look back at it later, you can look back at it later. So you don't have to worry about writing everything down. Just put your paper, put your pen down, and I'll just kind of do all the work right here, and we'll figure out where they made a mistake. First step here, you should add 3 to both sides, and that becomes 32. So they did that. Step 1's good. Next step, they should multiply both sides by 2. And when you multiply this side by 2, these cancel out. So that's good. But 32 times 2, what should this number be? 64, right? So it looks like they messed up in step number 2. That's it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic right here. This is my favorite. I mean, not my favorite, but this is kind of, you get to like drag things over. But you got to do it in the correct order, all right? So what we're going to do is we're going to do everything in the correct order, and then we'll show you guys what to do over here. All right, so what do I want you guys to do? I want you guys to write this equation out nice and neat on a scratch piece of paper or in your journal or wherever you're doing your work to help you on the Khan Academy. Now, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to write in words, step by step, how to solve this. If you want to write with me, you're more than welcome to. Try to do it nice and neat. Okay, so there we go. This title of this is called Quadratics by taking square roots with steps. That's the title. All right, here we go, everybody. Step 1, I'm going to write the instructions. We are going to add 5 to both sides. When I say to both sides, what am I referring to? Both sides of what?
Equal sign.
We're going to add 5 to this side, and we're going to add 5 to this side. And we're left with 2, parentheses, x plus 2 squared equals 98. So that's step 1. Add 5 to both sides. You can kind of see this right here. There it is, right there. There's step number 1. That's what I'm going to drag over when we do the answer. Okay. Step number 1. Step 2. Anybody want to take a risk and guess what step 2 is?
Divide everything by 2.
Right. Divide both sides by 2. So we're going to divide this side by a 2, divide this side by a 2. And we're left with x plus 2 squared equals 49. That's step number 2. Divide both sides by 2. So you can see right here, here's going to be my step 2. I'm going to drag that in second. All right. Anybody want to take a risk for step number 3?
Would you add 2 to both sides?
You gotta save that for later. There's a pesky little 2 right here, but that's, you know what? Thank you for taking a risk. That's important. We got to unsquare something that's being squared. So how do we unsquare something that's being squared?
Take the square root of.
That's it. Take the square root. So we're going to write take the square root I'm going to put on both sides. So take the square root on both sides. I'm going to take the square root on this side. I'm going to take the square root on this side. So right here, I'm going to go over here and take a look at my steps. That's step number 3. Take the square root of both sides. There we go. Step number 3. Now, here's what comes out. We've got a plus 2. Got a number plus 2 equals. Now, this is the part where you guys got, when you're doing it on your own, you have to remember, I'm not just going to put a 7 right here. What am I going to have to put in front of the 7?
Negative or positive?
That's right. Plus or a minus. Now, this is the last step that you have to know how to do. Now, what we have to ask ourselves is, self, how do I get rid of a positive 2? What do I have to do to get rid of a positive 2?
Negative 2.
Right. Get it out of the box, please. I apologize. There. Subtract 2 on both sides. So we're going to take away a 2. And my goodness, how do we take away a 2 from this? I'll show you guys how to go from this to your answer. So here we go. This is step number 4. So it says subtract 2 from both sides. That's step number 4. And that's basically all I'm going to do is get them in the correct order. Now, to find the actual final answer, we have a plus or a minus 7 minus 2. Like, how in the world did we come up with 2 different answers? So I want you guys to think of it this way. You've got plus 7 minus 2, and then you have minus 7 minus 2. So here's how you could write it. Ready? You could say x equals plus 7 minus 2. And you could also say x equals minus 7 minus 2. So you could write it like that. Well, what is 7 minus 2?
5.
And what's negative 7 minus 2?
Negative 9.
That's it, negative 9. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a solution set, even though you don't need it for this problem. All right, our solution set would be negative 9 and positive 5. Negative 9 would be referred to as the smaller 0. 5 would be referred to as the larger 0. Now, you don't have to actually do this final step right here. All it says is just subtract 2 on both sides and you'll be done. Okay, but I want to make sure you guys know, if you actually were asked to solve it from beginning to end, that's what that would be your final answer in the solution set. Those are called solution set brackets. These brackets right here are called solution set brackets. They're much prettier in real life than me drawing them on my own. So we're going to go ahead now. We're going to drag. So the first step, what did we do to both sides, everybody? What was the very first step? Help me out. I've totally.
Add 5 to
5
both.
to both sides.
Boom. What's the next step?
Divide both sides by 2.
All right. What's the next step?
Take the square root on both sides.
Boom. And the last step, what did we do?
Subtract 2 on both sides.
And bam, we got it. All right. Now, how about this? We'll do one more. All right. And it's a lot easier. All right. There's not that many steps. By the way, just because you see a big box doesn't mean there's going to be that many steps. Good job, everybody. This one's going to be super, super, super fast. There's not many steps at all, right? So all I'm going to do on this one, since you guys have one that has a lot of steps, we're just going to do one, and I'm just going to like label them 1, 2, 3, 4. Does anybody want to take a guess of what step 1 would be from this list?
Divide by 3.
Divide both sides by 3 is correct. That's step 1. So what we're going to do is we are going to divide this side and this side by a 3. And we get x plus 2 squared equals 16. All right, that's step number 1. What is step number 2?
Take the square root.
Boom. Take the square root. Like, why do we have to take the square root? Because that's being squared, so we got to take the square root. So we're going to take the square root of both sides. That's step 2. We're left with x plus 2. Oh, don't need that parentheses anymore. It's okay. Sorry. X plus 2. All right. I'm going to ask you all, see if you guys can get it. What do you think I'm going to put here if you had to put money on it?
Positive of negative 4.
What am I going to put right here?
Positive or negative 4.
That's it. Plus or minus. Not just a positive. We're also going to put plus or a minus. All right. And our final and last step, what do we do to both sides to solve for x?
Take away 2.
That's it. Take away 2. Take away 2. And our answer would be plus or minus 4 minus 2. So we'd have to basically make 2 equations. And we sort of say subtract 2 from both sides. That'd be step number 3. So this one only has 3 steps. Our solution set for this would be 4 minus 2, which is a positive 2, and negative 4 minus 2, which is a negative 6. So that's what you would write as a solution set. But ours is a lot easier. All we got to do is divide both sides by 3, take the square root of both sides, and then finally subtract 2 from both sides. Notice we didn't fill in all the slots because we didn't need to. And you're done. Okay. We only have a couple more sections to do before we go on to this section right here. Does anybody have any questions? Anybody want me to go back and explain anything that they were confused about? All right. Now this one's going to be pretty easy, everybody. But I want to make sure you guys know what this thing is called. We're graphing in vertex form. All right. We're graphing quadratic. Here's the title right over here. Graph quadratics in vertex form. And you're like, what in the world is vertex form? So I'm going to write down what vertex form is. This is new. So I'm not expecting everybody to totally understand vertex form. It's supposed to be a plus. You're like, what in the what? We have an A, an X, an H, and a K? What's going on around here? All right, so the vertex, everybody, in this form, the vertex will always be whatever the H and the K value is. All right, so this is what's called vertex form. So I'm going to write our problem down. I'm going to show you exactly where the vertex would be. I'm going to highlight something. I'm going to highlight my H value. I'm going to highlight, oh, I meant to put 1 there. Kind of gave that one away, huh? All right. Does anybody want to guess where I'm going to put the vertex on the graph? Like, what is the X value of the vertex and what's the Y value of the vertex? Just remember, the vertex, this is new. The vertex is H comma K. And I've highlighted what the H and the K value are. Anybody want to be the first to answer?
-1 and 1.
Close. You got half of it right. You're like, wait a second, how is it? It says minus. Now, here's what I want you to think about. In vertex form, what does that say? X minus your H value, right? So this is X minus what number? What number did I have to plug in? I actually had to plug in a 1, so that's why the X value is just 1. Now, what we're going to do, I don't know if you guys have, I'm going to go to Desmos real quick. And I want you guys to watch. We're going to explore this real quick in Desmos. It won't take long. All right, so this is vertex form. I'm going to add a slider to all of them, okay? And I want you guys to see right now what this is saying. This is saying right now that my A value is 1, my H value is 1, and my K value is 1. Okay, I'm going to leave my A value as a 1. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change my H value to a 2, Everybody see where my vertex is? My vertex right now is at a 2 and 1. If I move it all the way over to a 4, now I'm at 4 and 1. Okay? So what does the h value do? The h value deals with the x part of your vertex. All right, that's the h value. So if I said my h value was a -1, if you plug this in, that actually become x plus 1 squared. Now what does the k value do? K value simply moves it up or down. So the k value is the y value of your vertex. So what now if I go down all the way down to -4, you can see that this is my y value of my vertex. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and put some numbers in here. I'm just going to make this a 1. I'm going to put x minus 1 and 1 and make this right here, make this -3 so you guys can see it. So right now, let's go back to our page right here. You guys see our equation right here? -3 x minus 1 squared plus 1. So now I'm just going to go over to Desmos. There it is, -3 x minus squared plus 1. There's my vertex at a 1 and a 1. What I want you guys to see is if I change that to a 2 or a 3 or 4 or 5, I want you to pay very close attention to how the vertex shifts. So if I change that from a negative to a positive, now where's my vertex? -5. So here's an easy way to understand how to find your vertex and vertex form. What number makes this equal to 0? What number would I plug in right there where my finger's pointing? What number would I have to plug in there to make it equal to 0? -5. Okay? So if I said x minus 4, what number would I have to plug in there to make it equal to 0? +4. Okay? Now the k value, you can see no matter what I put in here, the k value is what you exactly see. If that says +5, you know the k value is +5. So how do I want you guys to graph this? Just use Desmos, type it in. I want you guys to recognize what the vertex is though. We're at a 1 and a 1, and a 0 and a -2. So all I'm going to do over here is I'm going to go, you got to play around with this. It's a negative graph, so it opens down. You can move these dots left or right. I'll move this over here. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go down, put it at a 1 and a 1 and a 0 and a -2, and hit check. On this graph right here, all you got to do when you're graphing these, you can type them into Desmos. By the way, the vertex right here is going to be at a 0, 1. That's being multiplied by 3. So I know this is going to be my graph, but I'm going to go ahead and just type it into Desmos so you guys can kind of see the pattern. All you need, how many points do you need? You just simply need 2 points. If you want to find where those points are, hit the little gear, convert it to a table, and you can find 2 points, a 0 and a 1, and a 1 and a 4. 0, 1, 1 and a 4, 0 and a 1, 1 and a 4. So right here, I'm going to be at 0, 1, and 1. All right, before I graph this, all right, the one thing I want you guys to do, I want you guys to write this down so that at least you guys know how to identify the vertex without using the graphing calculator, okay? So I'm going to show you guys, if I didn't have Desmos, how would I graph this by hand? I'm going to show you right now. So first thing I'm going to do is y equals -2 x plus 5 squared. That's the first thing. I'm going to write it down. Second thing, I'm going to identify the vertex. Now, this vertex is going to end up being a maximum height because it has a negative sign, which means my parabola ultimately is going to open down. I know it's going to open down because of that. I'm going to put a point right there. That's going to be my vertex. And here's how you find your vertex. what number would you plug in there to make this equal? What number would have to go right there? Negative 5. And then this right here, this is my y value, so I know my y value is going to be just a 4. That's the very first part. What number would you plug in there to make it 0? And whatever number is right there, that's your k value, also known as your y value of your vertex. The next thing that I'm going to do to find my next one, I'm going to put negative 5 and a 4 into the table. Over here, I'm going to use a negative 6. Over here, I'm going to use a negative 4. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to take this negative 6 or negative 4, and I'm going to plug it into our equation. And I'll just find a point. Okay? So I'm going to show you guys how to do this. So right here, I'm going to go over here to the right. Now, why did I choose a negative 6 or a negative 4? Because they're right next to that negative 5, because I know my vertex is at negative 5, 4. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take negative 2. I have a plus 5. And what number am I going to plug in for my x value? I'm going to plug in a negative 6 right there. Negative 6 plus 5 is negative 1. Negative 2. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Plus 4 is a 2. So I'm going to put a 2 right there. So you could use that. You could also plug in a negative 4. So if you wanted to plug in it, just plug in a negative 4. You could plug in a negative 4. You're left with negative 2. Negative 4 plus 5 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. And you still get the same points. So the 2 points that I'm going to use on this graph is a negative 6 and a 2 and a negative 5 and a 4, or a negative 5 and a 4 and a negative 4 and a 2. That's how you would do it by hand. Obviously in Desmos, what you could do is you could just go over here, type it in, y equals negative 2, open parentheses, just type it in exactly as it appears. Oops. And you can clearly see that I have a negative 5, comma 4. Go over here to the gear symbol, you make your table, and I'm going to type negative 6. I'm going to type in a negative 4, and you should be able to see those points that we found. Okay, so I'm going to take a screenshot of this. These were the points that I found using Desmos. These were the points I found using it by hand. Okay, or working through it by hand. So all I was doing was plugging in numbers into my equation. All right, so now all I'm going to do is go over here to the screen. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my point at negative 5, positive 4, and then over here. So obviously what I'd like you to do is attempt it by hand, see if you find 2 points, but then check it in Desmos before you decide to type it in. Okay? All right, that'll be enough for that one. Basically, I think you guys know what to do now. Anybody have any questions on this one?
No.
No.
I'm good.
Nah, we're good.
One more. After this, basically everything else, like the quiz will just be one from each of these. So basically, all I'm gonna do now is just do one more and we'll call it a day. We're dealing with word problems. And so what I'd like you to do is we're gonna find all the possible answers to this question that we could ask. So if you guys would please, I want you guys to write this equation down. down. And then we're going to draw, just kind of draw a graph. I'll have an x-axis. X-axis with my y-axis right here. I'll call this x. I'll call this h of x. And it says, Amir stands on a balcony and throws a ball to his dog who is at ground level. The ball's height in meters above the ground, x seconds after he threw it, is modeled by this equation. What is the height of the ball at the time of the throw? So what we're going to do, he's at a balcony. We'll say he's right up here at a balcony, all right? He throws the ball to his dog, which is on the ground, and that parabola is going to go down and hit the x-axis. Now, our parabola will also have another area right here, but we're not going to really pay attention to this area because that's in the negative. That's going to be a negative x value. In this real world problem, we're only going to be dealing with this area right in here. Okay. All right. So if he throws it right here, all right, it says what's the ball's height x seconds after he threw it. What's the height of the ball at the time it is thrown? That's the height of the ball at the time that it's thrown. So what do we call that point? What do you guys say? What do we identify a point that's on the y-axis? What do we call that?
Y-intercept.
That's it. So in this particular problem, what are we going to be looking for? Y-intercept. Y-intercept is when the x value is 0. So if I wanted to find the y-intercept for h of x by hand, this is what I would do. I would take my equation, and what number am I going to plug in for x? I'm going to plug in a 0. This is how I would do it by hand. So I would get a negative, 0 minus 2 is negative 2 squared plus 16. Negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. Negative 4 plus 16 is 12. So I'm going to say he's 12 meters above the ground. So this particular answer, my answer would just be the number 12. But that's not going to be the only answer that they're going to ask you about is the y-intercept. They're also going to ask you about this point right here. And what would we call this point right here? What is that referred to as in the parabola? I don't know. What's that point called right there?
Vertex.
It's the vertex. So they could ask you about the vertex. So we're going to find the vertex of this problem. All right. What about this point right here? What do we call that point right there in the graph? That's referred to as our 0. Also known as our root, our solution, often referred to as the x-intercept. It has many aliases. All right, so what we're gonna do is, what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna type this into Desmos, and we're gonna find all of these points and explain to you what the question will be. Okay, so I'll write down other questions they may ask you about this same type of graph. Go to Desmos. Oh, wrong one. Gonna type in just y equals negative parentheses x minus 2 squared plus 16. Zoom out. You can clearly see there's the 0, 12, there's 2, 16, and there's 6, 0. So here you see where it says 2, 16 and 6, 0. What I want you guys to do is on your paper that you're working on, I want you guys to write the vertex at 2, 16. And I also want you guys to write 6, 0. All right, so here we go. Question number 1. Other questions they could ask you. What is the maximum height that the ball gets? What is the maximum height of the ball? What would you guys say the maximum height of the ball is on this graph right here?
Is it 216?
You're right, the vertex, that is the maximum, you're right. It is at a 2 and a 16. Now the 16 represents the height. What does the 2 represent? What do you guys think the 2 represents?
Distance.
Actually, not distance. Height is the distance. The 2 represents right here the amount of seconds it takes to reach the maximum height. So they could ask you this question. How many seconds does it take to reach the maximum height? Sorry. How many seconds does it take to reach the maximum height? Then you would say it takes a total of 2 seconds. The last question they could ask you is this. How long does it take to hit the ground? How long does it take the ball to hit the ground? To hit or to land on the ground? Hit the ground. Because they could give you the exact same question except just change what they're asking, okay? It could be exact same equation but change. So how long would you guys say it takes for the ball to actually hit the ground? By the way, the ground is right here. This is the ground.
6.
That's right, 6 seconds. All right, I realize it's a lot of writing, okay? So we're gonna go over what we did here, okay? The step 1, real quick. Step 1, we took this equation, just typed it into Desmos. It says, what is the height of the ball at the time it is thrown? The height was the Y-intercept, so we know our answer is gonna be 12. But they could also said, what is the maximum height of the ball? Well, the maximum height of the ball is 16 meters. They could have also asked, how many seconds does it take to reach the maximum height? 2 seconds. They could have also asked, how long does it take the ball to hit the ground? 6 seconds. It hits the ground because right there, 0. 0 means it hit the ground. It's not on the balcony anymore. Okay? So I realize that's a lot to take in. What we're going to do is I am going to close that, go to manage assignments, go to word problems one more time because that was the last one. All right. Oh, look at this. Look at this. Funny thing. Same question, everybody. I just started it again. Same equation. This says what? How many seconds after being thrown will the ball hit the ground? We already found it. What's that? This is the same. See how it's the same exact equation? How long does it take the ball to hit the ground? 6 seconds. Same equation. Different answer. Okay? All right. This is going to be the last one that we do, and we'll call it a day. All right? So right now, I want you guys to look right here at this equation. It says, what temperature will result in the maximum number of fish? What does that mean? That means we have a parabola. It's going to look like this. So it's going to go up and go back down. Okay? It's dealing with what? the maximum number of the fish. But right now we have to ask ourselves, what's it asking for? Is it asking for the X value or is it asking for the Y value? Is it asking for the maximum number of the fish? Or is it asking for the temperature that it will be in order to create the maximum number of fish? Somebody's making a noise back. All right, so what's the question asking for? Is it asking for the maximum number of the fish or the temperature? What is it asking for? Asking for the temperature, right? What temperature will result in the maximum? So here's what you guys have to understand. The question, now this one you're going to be looking for the X value of the vertex. I'll just show you how to do that. All you do is just type in the equation. Look at it real quick. X minus 9. And it says plus 200. You zoom out. Find the vertex. Our vertex is at a 9 and a 200. 9 and a 200. So at a 9 and a 200, it's going to take right here. That's I know somebody's making some noise in the background. See here. All right, let's finish this off now. I apologize, I just kind of muted everybody except for me. So right now, right here, our vertex is at a 9 and a 200. I want you guys to see what vertex, this is in vertex form, so it kind of gives you the vertex every single time. All right, so our answer is going to be just 9. All right, so on this particular question, we're just going to put 9 degrees, and that's it. What I'm going to do now, guys, I'm going to go ahead. Does anybody have any questions before we call this a day? Because these are all the assignments that you guys need to do. The quiz will just be different questions from each of these.
I'm good.
All right. Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to be, after I end the session, I'm going to go ahead and download it, and I'll send you all a link to it in case you want to look over what we did today. Okay? If you guys need individual help, if you're stuck with a question, just send me a text on Remind, and maybe we can schedule a 5-10 minute tutorial or something like that throughout the week if you're stuck on anything particular. Okay? But just let me know through Remind if you guys need any help. Okay?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Sounds awesome.
But you guys got to give me a heads up and let me know, and then we can figure it out. You can text back and forth on Remind, and I can also do individual quick little Zoom meetings, and we'll figure out from there. Y'all have a good day, okay?
Yeah.
You too.